Good morning, Soledad. How are you?
Good morning to you. Yeah, we're new. I'm well, and we're relatively new. We launched on January 1st. Started covering the primaries, obviously through the elections. We've been knee deep in politics, and now the fiscal cliff, and then more.
Is it a lot of pressure when you start a show like that, and you are the host of the show? What is the pressure like on a cable network or on network television or whatever to have ratings performance?
It's interesting, and I definitely look at the ratings, and I monitor our ratings, but I don't know. I think anybody with a show, you can't really go into your show that way, right? You have to figure out, like, what do I believe? What's my philosophy? What kind of stories do I want to tell? What do I do, and what do I bring? And that's really what I focus on, much more than, here are the overnights, which I absolutely look at. But I think you'll lose your mind, and you can't program a show by looking at the last day's overnights. It's just not. It's not how it's done. You have to have a gut on what you want to tell and what your show's about.
How are people at CNN reacting? We've had Jeff Zucker on our show before a while ago, maybe 6 months ago, and now he has taken over CNN. How are people there reacting to that?
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's great news. He was my boss when I was at the Today Show, so I welcome him coming again to be my boss. It's terrific. He has such a great track record in the mornings. I mean, obviously the Today Show, history making. So people here are thrilled. And we've gone a little while without the top leadership. We were waiting to have someone come in and be named, and I think just having that name named and have it be someone who is honestly renowned in the business is such a relief for everybody. We're really excited about it.
We've had Anderson Cooper on the show a number of times from CNN. In fact, he loves some of the videos that we've put out. He's played it on his show numerous times, some of these funny videos that we've done. And we've talked to him about this, that he's more of a hard news person, and he'll go in depth. It's not the sort of flashiness that you might see at Fox News or MSNBC and all the yelling and the talking heads and that kind of stuff. Is there any pressure on you, Soledad, as you host Starting Point weekday mornings there? Is there any pressure to sort of spice things up? Because that's what seems to be getting ratings now, is these arguing talking heads, and the more ridiculous you are, or the more left-leaning or the more right-leaning or whatever. How difficult is it?
We've found tremendous success with holding people accountable to literally the most shows and segments that I've done that go viral, that people talk about and write about, are the ones where I turn to page 115 in the Congressional Budget Report and read back to the congressman who is lying to me about what it says or what it actually says, or I read verbatim quotes from the president or from some other elected official and hold people accountable in a conversation that we're trying to have. So I think that's very much in the same vein that Anderson believes too, which is this sense of, it's less about, are you politically on the left or are you politically on the right, and more about, are you lying to me, and are you lying to your constituents? What is the actual story? What was actually said? How did it really go? What are the facts of the case? And I think if you can stick to that, I mean, again, the stories that I've done that have gone viral are those stories.
You do this series, Black in America, the 5th anniversary special edition of this. Airs on Sunday at 8 p.m. on CNN with Soledad O'Brien. I have to ask you, what nationality are you? I don't even know. Just looking at you, you can't tell.
My mom is black and from Cuba. My dad is white and from Australia. His grandparents were from Ireland. So technically I could check a lot of boxes. I identify as black and Latino, and I have 5 brothers and sisters. We all look exactly the same. But our latest documentary is really about identity. Who is black, and is it a self-identity that makes you black? Is it society saying, well, this is what you look like, so then you're black or you're not black? And we really have a conversation about colorism, judging people on the color of their skin, and discrimination based on skin tone, and privilege, frankly, based on skin tone in this 5th anniversary documentary.
Well, you're very light-skinned. Do people ever say your mother was a black Cuban? That's an interesting point that you're doing in this thing. Does anyone ever look at you and say, well, you're not black enough? I saw a story on television years ago, and it was a woman who was a lighter-skinned black talking about the differences just within the black community between dark-skinned black people, prejudice shown towards them, and light-skinned blacks.
You know, the sad thing is, like, there's plenty of prejudice to go around, isn't there? In the black community, in the white community, yeah, absolutely. In fact, when we did our first Black in America, there were people who would say, well, you know, why are you even doing this? You're not even black, or you're not really black. But one of the things that I thought was a great outcome of that documentary was that you start having conversations about, okay, well, what does it mean to be black? Or people would say, well, you know, you haven't had the black experience. You know, and the great thing about being a journalist is that you're in a position to push back and say, well, what does that mean? I'm curious to know what your definition of the universal black experience is. To have some of the young people in the documentary that the documentary is based in Philadelphia. It's a young man whose parents are from Gambia. They're from Africa. And he says, you know, people in my neighborhood would say, well, you're not really black. He's like, I am literally off the boat from Africa, and I don't, you know, I don't qualify as black. It's an interesting debate, and I have found a lot of I just find it helpful and compelling to share my own story and be part of that conversation, because I don't think there's a right answer and a wrong answer. I mean, at the end of our documentary, I don't decree, and this is how it works. You know, here's who is black, here's the list. It is more of, why is this conversation relevant, and why do we have it anyway? What are the historic roots of why the color of your skin mattered? I think it's an interesting look at American history in some ways as well, in addition to telling the story of these young women who are really grappling with their own self-identity.
Soledad O'Brien is on with us. She hosts Starting Point on CNN, 7 to 9 a.m. every weekday. Have you ever covered on this Black in America? I know I can give you sort of a white experience, I guess. A lot of white people have the impression that black people in America are racist toward them. And I hear it very often. They say, well, there's more discrimination coming our way from black people than the other way.
You know what I think this is, and from going both directions, I think people are very panicked to talk about race, right? I think white people feel like if I open my mouth and say anything, I'm going to be targeted and painted as a racist, and everyone's going to, you know, say this white person's a racist. And black people feel like, oh, and if I open my mouth and talk about how I'm feeling, I'm going to be that angry, complaining black person about race once again. And so what happens is that on both sides, nobody really has a frank discussion about their take on race. And a lot of people, I mean, not a lot, maybe a handful of people I know certainly on Twitter have sent me, you know, why do you even raise this? If you just would stop talking about it, it would go away. And of course, it's not going to go away. You know, race is very related to the formation of this country. I believe in honest conversations, but also where everybody's experience is a valid and interesting experience. Let's dig into what people are saying. I'm curious. And I think one thing we've been able to do in this documentary series is bring out some of those conversations into the open so we can, you know, think about how we feel about them and not just say, well, if we just don't talk about race, you know, maybe it'll all just go away.
Before I let you go, Soledad, one last question for you. I looked at some of these lists of things that you've covered. I've been a fan of Soledad since The Site on MSNBC. I remember that show.
You're one of the 6 people who watch it.
I swear I was. I'm a big tech nerd. You've covered a lot of stories. The tsunami, where like 250,000 people died. You've covered, I mean, just a wide variety of things. What's the story that's impacted you the most? Is it a big thing like that, or is it maybe a smaller one-on-one story?
You know, I think it probably would be Hurricane Katrina. Because Hurricane Katrina was a story that I really feel like I haven't left. I've done a number of documentaries now in New Orleans. My husband and I started a foundation. We send girls to college, to and through college, with financial help and mentoring and support. And we started it in New Orleans. It now is nationwide. I think New Orleans is a place that I really feel very much at home in because of all the time I spent covering a story of a city that's a beautiful city that was really on its knees. So if I had to pick one story, I mean, it's kind of like being forced to pick, you know, which of your kids is your favorite kid. But if I had to pick one story, because I've done so many stories there and years of work there, it would have to be the coverage of Hurricane Katrina.
Soledad O'Brien hosts Starting Point on CNN, 7 to 9 a.m. every weekday morning, and also the 5th anniversary special edition of Black in America. That series airs this Sunday at 8 p.m. on CNN. Soledad, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.